Variant is in the country. What are the next steps we need to take? Let's hear now from Doctor Lulu Bravo of the Philippine Foundation for Vaccination. And she's also a pediatric infectious disease specialist. And she joins us tonight on the program. Dr. Bravo, thank you so much for joining us. First of all, are you concerned that this UK variant is now in the country, or was it just a matter of time that it entered our shores?
That's right. We have always been saying it doesn't mean when it will come. It will come. It is not surprising at all. It was really expected. Even our Institute of Molecular Biology and Biotechnology, Dr. Edsel Salvana, who has been at the thick of all of the genomic sequencing even before, has really also predicted that sooner or later we'll have it.
But, Doctor, the government basically imposed a passenger and travel ban on Christmas Day, December 25th, which lasts until January 15th. But this case happened on January the 7th. So are we not protecting our borders enough from this UK variant, which has now entered our shores, I mean, into the second week of the new year?
Rico, there is no perfect world. We can have all of these protective mechanisms. We really have to have it in place. And the more preventive measures we do, the more likely we will be successful. But as I said, there's nothing that you can say is 100% perfect world. There will always be a chance for us to really get these things. Some failure will have to be done. But the more that we take out all of this and make sure that we practice what the Department of Health is saying about making sure we have all this masking and distancing and really washing hands, all of this, these are important, but it cannot be perfect.
Absolutely. There's really no perfect system. And of course, in your conversations with other infectious disease specialists overseas, Dr. Bravo, what have you been told about this UK variant? Why is it more transmissible and why is it more infectious?
Viruses usually have this kind of mutation as a form of a defense for themselves. You know, they mutate because they have to adapt to the environment. And the more virus, the higher the incidence of the virus in a place, in a country, the more there could be mutations. And we now know that this virus is not really as deadly as the other original one, but it can be highly more transmissible. So we need really more preventive measures to try and reduce the transmissibility. And you know how it could be done by doing your face mask, by really washing hands and distancing. But it is not more deadly than the other original one that we have. This 116 variant is transmissible, higher in transmissibility, but not more deadly.
Well, that's good to know. But what would be your advice right now to the national government, Doctor? Because 33 territories, there's a travel ban, there's a passenger ban until Friday. Should this be extended? Should we return to tighter quarantine rules? Or is what we are doing now sufficient to protect ourselves from the further incursion of this UK variant into the country?
I think the government is trying to do its best. The Philippine Genomic Center is doing the surveillance, right? We do have this in place. We have a good surveillance system. All the samples that are being submitted are being inspected, being investigated, so that if there are any other variant aside from this one, we could readily see it. We will get whatever we have in the genomic sequencing or the genomic center, the Philippine Genomic Center under Dr. Saloma. That is really something that we should be grateful for, that we do have this genomic center with us. That was, I think, at the UP Diliman campus set up. And we do have lots of experts. You know, I I told you earlier, we are not lacking in experts. We have a lot of scientists, both in the biomolecular world, biotechnology world, in the genome, in the National Institutes of Health, where I come from, we do have also, and the Institute of Biotechnology and Molecular Biotechnology is there. So we have lots of people. Now, at the Department of Health, we also have the kind of monitoring and trying to really curtail and control the incidence of COVID, because as we all know, the more COVID we have, the more there will be possibility of variants coming out.
So, Doctor, you are also a vaccination expert, and according to recent articles, the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccines are effective against this UK variant. But the Pfizers and the AstraZenecas and the Modernas will only be coming in the second half of the year. And the first batch of vaccines will be coming from China, which is Sinovac. Do you have full confidence in the China vaccine that is only 50%? Well, to be exact, 50.38% effective, a record of suspended clinical trials, and has not even applied for emergency use authorization to protect our kababayans against COVID-19 and this new UK variant.
Rico, I have full confidence on our FDA with all the vaccine experts in their midst. We have the vaccine expert panel. We have a whole scientific committee there. We have the National Immunization Technical Advisory Group. We have the Technical Advisory Group, that what we call the HTAC, Health Technical Assessment Committee. These are all composed of qualified, very highly motivated experts, scientists, who have the experience to really look and see what these vaccines will present in terms of safety, efficacy, terms of the structure, the number of volunteers that have been included in the trial, the completeness of the trial.
But doctor,
you have phase 1, phase 2, phase 3.
Yeah,
I have full confidence. So if they approve this vaccine, whatever vaccine they approve, I think we should all be confident that we are going to get the safest and the most efficacious at the price and at the availability, that earliest availability that we can get.
But doctor, the Sinovac vaccine hasn't even applied for emergency use authorization, and it's only 50% effective, and it is the second most expensive vaccine at 3,600 pesos. You are a frontliner, doctor. If you were chosen to be one of the first to be immunized with Sinovac, will you have yourself vaccinated?
Rico, I have been a vaccine trialist for almost 35 years. We've done lots and lots of vaccine trials. And inactivated vaccine, which is the Sinovac, okay, it's called an inactivated, meaning it's kind of the organism killed, and then it is given some substances that will make it inactive, but the structure that is the microbe or the organism still there, and that is the one that is included in the vaccine so that it can produce the immunity that it needs to have in the body. Now, inactivated vaccines have been here for 222 years. Do you realize that the first vaccine that has been eradicated from the world has been done in 1798?
Yes. Doctor, you say
years.
We've had inactivated...
And it is made of inactivated vaccine.
Yeah, doctor, you say we've had inactivated vaccines in the country for hundreds of years, but were they Chinese vaccines? Because most of the vaccines that I know that that are being used by doctors are from Western countries, but not from China.
I know vaccine development has been here for hundreds of years. In fact, there is, if you read my article on the vaccine history, the first vaccine was actually not in England, which was in 1798. The first vaccines were done in China. even more than 2,000 years ago.
Okay.
Did you know that?
So,
It
so
was the
doctor,
Chinese actually. But I'm not saying that, you know,
so
this is
doctor,
the
you're
best
putting
vaccine.
your
What I'm saying-
100% trust on Chinese vaccine.
Yes, it needs a careful investigation of the data. We cannot just believe what we see, what we read. For us scientists, for those who have been doing clinical trials, we have to look at the data. We have to look at how many volunteers were included in the study, how many months of observation were done during the study. Even the mRNA, you know, this is the first vaccine that is being used in humans, right?
Yes.
And it was done very, very fast because, well, this is technology.
Yes.
We don't want to say that, you know, it compromised anything. But it is important that we look at the actual data
Okay.
and see whether indeed it will be good for the Filipinos. Because as you have probably heard also, many things depend upon the incidence of COVID in your country. When you have to recommend a vaccine, you have to look at the epidemiology. By epidemiology, we mean how much COVID is in the country. If you have only like
So-
50% efficacy, which was what WHO said at the beginning of the pandemic, that if we will have a vaccine that is 50 to 70% efficacious, that was acceptable. You know why? Because
but
when
doctor,
you have a very high
but doctor,
incidence of
yeah, but doctor,
COVID,
don't we want a vaccine that is 95% efficacious rather than 50%?
that safety and efficacy data was actually done, you know, in America, where you have maybe a higher incidence of COVID. Every country will have to report its incidence of COVID, and it will have to be used in the calculation for a better way to seek out or to recommend what would be an appropriate vaccine
So,
for us.
doctor,
We have to get all the you know, all the specialties brains to
Okay.
be picked, to be actually coming together to make that recommendation. I cannot
Okay.
be just one person doing it.
Doctor,
It is a composite field.
Dr. Bravo, Indonesia began the rollout of the Sinovac vaccine today, and President Joko Widodo was among those who got the first dose this Wednesday. Can we take a look at what Joko Widodo did? He did it, and he got the first dose of the Sinovac vaccine, which we are saying is 50.38% effective. So to be able to take away all this vaccine hesitancy and this fear among Filipinos, shouldn't the President Duterte, also do the same to quell any doubts about the vaccine and bring confidence to this vaccination program? Shouldn't he set an example by being inoculated first, together with his cabinet members?
Rico, there's one strategy that you can do. But as I said, we will all stick to the principle that only if our FDA, which has been authorized and which has actually the mandate to say whether a vaccine will be recommended for you, because, you know, it's not easy. As I said, you will have your epidemiologist, you will have your health economics, you will have your public health expert to look at all this data and see you have a very high morbidity, mortality, meaning you have a lot of hospitalization. Your health system is gonna be overwhelmed. You have a very high deaths from COVID. And then you are saying that the available one that you can negotiate has a 50% efficacy, that if you compute, and as I said, this is something mathematical sometimes, you have something that you can use that will decrease your death rate and your morbidity or your hospitalization to at least half. Wouldn't you want to use it? Because if you have to wait, if you have to wait for that vaccine, which is 95% effective, but will be available 6 months after, how many deaths would you now have in your hands? Think about that. This is a mathematical equation. I don't have all the answers. I can only depend on all of these bright minds, okay? to come together, as I said, and compute all this, because we are in a pandemic. We are in a war. Our enemy is a virus that is so invisible, but all we have is this vaccine that will tell us. It's like, you know, you don't have a nuclear bomb. You are in a war. You don't have a nuclear bomb. Only your cannons and, you know, only your guns and rifles and there. That's the only one available. Will you
All
use
right.
it? The enemy is approaching and you won't use it because you don't want to use it because it may not be effective and kill all your enemies. You know, I don't know, this is something that we really have to sit down together, and that
Right.
is what the FDA must do. And that's the
Yes.
reason
Okay.
why it takes a long time, 2 weeks to 3 weeks, before FDA can actually make that EUA, as you have seen. I think
Right.
our DG Domingo, Director General Domingo, has
Yes,
said
doctor.
that it will take about 3 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, for him to make that decision for an EUA, emergency use authorization,
All right,
because
doctor.
he has to look at the data. Sometimes this data may not be available to you, and you have to look at what
Doctor?
countries have used the vaccine.
Doctor, I'll have to jump in. We would like to thank you for joining us in the final word. Definitely, the discussions will continue until the vaccines arrive. Dr. Lulu Bravo, the Executive Director of the Philippine Foundation for Vaccination.